Hey everybody, this is Perch. Um, okay, all right. I should probably start talking at this point. Look, I want to talk about an interesting truth in comics that I don't think is everybody's truth, and in fairness, I'm glad for that because for the majority of us, if you're a customer of comics, if you're somebody who enjoys comics, you just want to open up and read comics. That's the goal, right? Buy comics, read comics, enjoy comics, not feel bad about the money you spent on comics, and then maybe you have a good memory that you could talk to somebody else about. That's the dream. It's actually not that complicated, but that's the dream of comics. It's that simple or that complicated, depending on your point of view. Um, but there's a lot of videos and commentary about the problems with comics, and you see this happen with different things that people love. Is that you get into kind of a routine and a almost in the corporate world we call this a narrative. We get into a narrative about the problems in comics, and they are too woke, they are too toxic, they are too. I mean, you could kind of go down the list of all things people say. Um, but I want to give you, in my opinion, the biggest problem in comics that I suspect many of you, the listeners here, will not agree with. And I think that's okay and normal. I don't take that as bad. I don't feel insulted for you not agreeing with me here. But I want to make a strong case for why it's the biggest problem in comics. And it's this. It's that comics struggles. When I say comics, I'm talking about the industry, the professionals, the people who are working in it. Comics struggles to see that it has a problem. I would equate comics in some cases to an alcoholic who has not yet kind of recognized that, maybe drinking into oblivion and then getting in the car and driving around afterward is a problem. This isn't like the kind of, but what I'm about to say here is this isn't the kind of argument you would want to give to your kids, if you're trying to, basically, by the way, as a parent, and I'm a couple of years away from this, but not that many years, just a couple of years. All of you, by the way, have grown up with my kids. When I started doing this channel, my younger daughter was four, and is now 10. And that's a big difference. If you've never been a parent, you'll have to take my word for it. That's a significant age difference. Somebody who wasn't going to school to now, having opinions, and you can't shut them up. I'm just kidding. I need to have my kids on more. I've explained this before. Every now and then people write me emails going, I used to have your kids on. Why don't you have your kids on your channel anymore? It was really fun. Well, it was quite bluntly, it was the 20th, probably the 20th email of somebody saying, I'd like to rape your children, that caused me to stop putting my daughters on the channel. That I wish it was more complicated than that. That's it. That as a dad, I'm like, I admit I'm done. That was it. But I'm back to this alcoholic analogy. As my older daughter, who is 13, will be driving, soonish. Time flies quickly, so soonish. I'm trying to give her the best reason why you need to be responsible in the car, which includes not, recording videos while you're driving, or you're certainly getting hammered and driving around. But the thing I won't tell her, the thing you wouldn't tell your kids is, you could actually get hammered, and I'm not saying this from experience, but you could get hammered and drive around, and you're probably going to be okay for quite a while until you're not. The thing about drunk driving is that the people who drive drunk generally get away with it for a very long time before one day they don't. And the reason why you put so much emphasis behind it is when you don't get away with it, generally is fatal, or can be fatal to the driver or to other people around them. And that's why it's such a kind of sinister, problem, is that you can drive around and you can get away with it. And so it gives you false confidence that, hey, what I'm doing is fine. There's no real problem here. And that and then once in a while, I mean, look, I'll put it to you another way. The amount of people that probably drive around drunk, because I'm terrifying everybody driving right now listening to this channel, the amount of people who drive around drunk, it's like 1 in 50, 1 in 100 that's actually getting in a wreck, maybe less than that. And so, what that means is it gives you a lot of confidence that, yeah, you could probably get away with it. I had a good friend who told me for 20 years that they quote unquote knew how to drive drunk and it would be just fine. And because for 20 years they got away with it. And then one day they didn't. And the guy, ran into somebody else and he died. And the passenger in the other car died. And that was it. That was the end of that. And that's that's the piece where I'm going to relate it to comics. And by the way, when I talk to people in comics, when I have these conversations with creators, or increasingly, and what got, by the way, the impetus behind this video is I was having a conversation with somebody who was one of the leaders in comics, who isn't anymore. And, he was saying, he was basically arguing with me about certain things. And no, it's not Joe Quesada. By the way, people like to guess at these things. It's not Joe Quesada, for what it's worth. I have spoken to Joe Quesada. It's not Joe Quesada. I don't even think I'm saying his last name right. But, hey, write me, Joe, tell me. Anyway, I get into these arguments around kind of how comics are, how comics aren't. And the thing that I think is the biggest problem in comics is that comic people tend to overlook the obvious problems. And the obvious problems we've talked about on this channel quite a lot. Like, you really need to get BarCon under control because, it is causing you lots of problems. You need to figure out how to have your professionals, your people who are, in comics, feel good about being positive and promoting comics, not promoting the worst aspects of comics. When you see a creator, and it's unfortunately, it's too much bait. You see Mark Brooks do it. You see Tom Taylor do it. You see a variety of people do it who have decent careers in comics. And, if you're heavily involved in the Twitter argument around comics, you have an opinion on one side or the other. But I want to have you take a step back for a moment to say, if you're Mark Brooks, what is the value to yourself as a creator or to comics as an industry to have you get in a fight with Comicsgate on your Twitter feed? What's the value? Think about it transactionally for a minute. Stop thinking about it, from emotion or from morals, and think about it as a transaction. What is the financial value? What is the business value of getting in a fight on Twitter? The answer is, unless that fight is about who would win between Hulk and Superman, because you're literally drawing a comic in 3 months where Hulk and Superman are fighting, there is no value to that fight. Zero. I'll watch Tom Taylor, I watch Tom King, I'll watch Dan Slott, other people. I mean, take Dan Slott for a minute. Dan Slott loves to get into weird little arguments on Twitter. None of those arguments are valuable to Dan Slott as an individual. If you're counting Twitter likes and follows as dopamine hits, I guess you can call that value, but guess what? There's no financial value. Dan Slott on Twitter is not handing Dan Slott a check for engagement. The value Dan Slott is getting is personal feels from that engagement. Being in a fight with people on Twitter, and forgive me, by the way, customers, fans, people listening to this channel, please forgive me for what I'm about to say. Getting a fight with randos on Twitter is not building business value. Selfishly for you as a creator or for the company. Not a single copy of Spider-Man is going to get sold by being in a fight on Twitter about politics. The best case in all this is that you enjoy the amusement of getting into a fight on Twitter, and so this makes you work better, harder, because you are happy that you got into a social media argument. That's the best case scenario here. The biggest problem in comics is that it doesn't acknowledge the problem that it has. Like an alcoholic, it hasn't hit the stage yet where it goes, I think you haven't raised the hand yet and said, I think I have a problem here. Comics are fun, they're entertainment, they're engagement for all of us. I'm hoping that people listen to the channel. I don't know, maybe some of you in the comments tell me, do you read comics? I want you to answer that. It's where are we in this video? Are we like 10 minutes in? 11 minutes in? Do you enjoy comics? Do you like to read comics? I'd like you to say so in the comments, if you wouldn't mind. You're your own person. You don't have to do what I say. But I would like you to say, I like to read comics. I like to enjoy comics. Or, and this takes honesty, I'd like you to say, I don't read comics anymore. I'm just here for the fights. Okay, good to know that too. My guess is the majority of my channel, people like to read comics. And my guess is the majority of people listening to the channel would really like, if you could wave a magic wand and you could get out of Twitterverse for a moment and you could say, what is it that you would like more than anything? What's your one wish? My guess is, on this channel of the listeners, and this is my faith in all of you, that the vast majority of you would say, I want more great comics to read, or something along those lines. Doesn't have to be those words exactly, but something like that. I'm guessing that not many of you are saying, I'd like to see Tom King run out of the industry. I'd like to see, I don't know, I don't want to see VIL ever get work again. I'm guessing very little of you are saying that, because most of you realize that doesn't help you. One of the lessons to this channel, it's going to sound weird saying it this way, is be selfish. As a consumer, as a customer, be selfish. When I say be selfish, I mean be selfish in that you want to read good things. If I say I'd like Tom King run out of the industry, I don't know, that may feel good to some of you, it may not, but that doesn't give me more good comics to read. Reduction doesn't help. I want addition. I want good comics. I don't believe that Tom King leaving the industry would automatically pave the way for 20 great writers to appear and suddenly I'd get great comics. I don't believe that. So to me, addition is key. But the biggest problem in comics is admitting you have a problem. And comics has a problem. There's too much, there's just too much focus on things that do not add value. Every single time that some of these creators, and it's the argument I was having with the, with the guy I was fighting with, is, I understand that everybody needs their freedom of expression, but does that add value? As an individual, it probably doesn't, although it's easy to ignore that. Just like the drunk driver, it's easy to say, it's fine. I haven't killed anyone yet. It's okay. So I'm doing fine. I get a drink. I get to have fun while I'm drinking. I get to drive home. I'm not dead. Therefore, life is good. Sounds great. But there's a large element of denial in there. Conversely, you want to add value. And the biggest problem the comic industry has, in my mind, is that it doesn't focus on value. It ignores those value, conversations and plans and other things. And instead, it focuses heavily on things that honestly don't matter. Comics needs to admit it has a problem. The fact that it hasn't is the problem. Anyway, there's my thought of the evening. I drove home sober and safe tonight. I'm not worried about killing anyone. Too many people in comics, quite frankly, are taking that risk, metaphorically. Thanks for listening.